Welcome back for another episode of Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. I am your host, Kristen Goss, founder and owner of KWG, Family Legal and Mediation Services. We are your knowledgeable, warm, and gracious attorneys. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube page. And I am excited because I have a friend and colleague here with us today. Her name is attorney Emmanuelle Litvinov. She is a business transaction attorney, and we'll find out more about her journey and what that entails and the services she can offer. But before we get into our conversation, I want to give a brief overview and bio of Emmanuelle, and then we'll get into our discussion. So, Emmanuelle running a business comes with nonstop decisions, operations, contracts, growth strategies, and risk management. That's where attorney Emmanuelle S. Litvinov comes in. As your outside in-house counsel, she helps business owners handle everything from the everyday legal challenges to major transactions like mergers, acquisitions, and private securities. No business is too small, whether you're fine-tuning operations, negotiating deals, or planning for the future. Emmanuelle provides practical, business-first legal solutions that keep you protected and moving forward. Industry agnostic and deeply experienced, she works as a true partner to business owners like you out there, ensuring they have the legal clarity they need to scale and succeed. So thank you for joining me, Emmanuelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, my pleasure. So I guess the first question I have for you to share with the audience is your personal journey. Everyone has a personal story that kind of leads and guides us into what we're doing today. So if you can share that on a personal level, what got you to being a business transaction attorney?
Sure. So I'm a little different in the attorneys. I knew I wanted to be in legal when I was 5. So my grandfather was a judge, and I looked up to him, and I knew I wanted to go into law. At the same time, I grew up in a 3-generation family business. And so I was a young kid filing, when my dad had to go in on Sunday to get some work done, I'd help him out. My summers were spent learning the ins and outs of the business. I rode routes. I worked in the plant. I kind of shadowed every person that kind of worked in there. I worked in a component of it, really learned what it takes to run a business. And my parents worked together. So family dinners were about, business oriented, very immersed in it. And now I married an entrepreneur. And so I see the ins and outs, and it was very ingrained in me my whole life of just running a business. My love for business came from a very young age, and I realized I wanted to combine the two. So in college, I majored in business and then went on to law school because I knew that was my route. So not your typical, usually it's, I didn't know what else to do, or a few different reasons, or they love a certain aspect of law. But it was a combination of two things that were ingrained in me from such a young age.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you learn something new every day because I didn't know that story. So thank you for sharing. And I think that that's important to know, even though it wasn't the traditional thing. But I think that having that experience and that exposure at such a young age and it being ingrained in you, it shows the passion that you have for helping other business owners. So thank you for what you do and for sharing that story. More on a professional level, what are the services that you provide as a business transaction attorney? Share with the audience a little bit about that, because a lot of our audience members out there are business owners, and if they have any questions or anything like that, as far as the services, that would be something insightful for them to know.
Sure. So my clients range from everything from the scrappy startups to, your well-established businesses. As you mentioned, industry agnostic, size agnostic. I represent clients across the country. I am licensed in California and Florida, but deals happen everywhere, right? A lot of business owners, the deal happens where the money is. And so I'll give a little bit of a few examples of things I've worked on in the last year before I kind of break down my services. So just in the last year, I helped a startup construction company kind of structure so they can scale. I supported a $73 million debt equity deal in their acquisition of an HVAC company. I represented and managed an acquisition of a restaurant with 3 Michelin star chefs. I worked on a few different service agreements and venture agreements for a couple different private clients with public companies. So brand engagement letters, certain IP where it touches with the brand and work product, et cetera. I don't do trademarks and patents. I have a IP attorney that I love that I send that work to. But so the services, I like to think of myself as a right hand to my client. So I'm a lefty, but I'm your right hand. And there's really 5 services that I offer. So number 1, I like to start with the end in mind. When I first meet a client, I ask them, what are your goals personally and for your business, right? Because oftentimes, especially with entrepreneurs, the two intertwine. Mm-hmm. If you're married, your spouse also has opinions on what that looks like as well. So it's a very involved conversation. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about that end, that succession planning. What does exit look like? And whether you're going to be growing the business, selling, or acquiring others, it's very important to understand what that looks like. And this one's huge as well, because oftentimes they get so immersed in the business from the beginning, and it's very hard to then separate yourself. If your business cannot run without you, it's not as valuable as it can be. So really helping ideally structure it from the beginning to make sure that it's transferable. And what does that look like? And whether that's to your kid or whether that's to somebody else or whether that's, God forbid something happens, right? You need to make sure that it's transferable. And so really having that conversation, the goals also help me fully understand the business so that when you call me in the future and say, hey, I want to do XYZ, we don't need to spend, an X amount of time to really delve deeper in, because I already understand the ins and outs of your business, which I really like to do with every client. And so that's number 1. Number 2 is that day-to-day operations, the business structure from the partnership agreements, operating agreements. I like to build in a buy-sell provision in those operating agreements instead of having to have a separate one under the succession planning that we just talked about. But so, really setting up the company, if you need to do a reorganization, handle that process. And then number 3, okay, you have your business structured, you know what you want the path to look like. The next one is, let's say you want to raise capital. So you have a friends and family round, or you want to go out, solicit. I draft all of those offering documents, the PPM involved, help you stay compliant with the SEC. Depending on the state that you're raising capital from, there's the blue sky filings, and just really help you structure and manage those deals. And huge about that one is founder control. A lot of people are so excited to raise capital, and they don't understand all the traps involved. Mm-hmm. And then they give up too much control. So really help you kind of assess what's going on, how much control, the risk reward. Raising capital is all about risk and reward. So that's that one. The next one is mergers and acquisitions, right? So you've raised capital, you're doing great, high valuation, you're ready to either buy or sell. So I handle buy and sell side acquisitions and then represent you throughout that entire process, everything up through closing. And again, specifically important that a lot of people don't think about is that post-closing integration. Everybody's generally so focused on everything that happens pre-closing. Mm-hmm. You sign the documents, great, what happens post? Mm-hmm. And so I like having those conversations very early on to make sure, again, buyer or seller's goals, if we're on the sell side, what do you want your life to look like post this sale? If you're staying on for a year or 2, what kind of buyer do you want that relationship with? That's huge. Some people think, okay, I'm going to sell to private equity. This one, they're going to let me run the company. You need to have those conversations. You need to make sure everybody's on the same page, because an acquisition, if a sale, it's like a marriage. You do so much when choosing a partner, right? It's the same type of thought and intention has to go in to choosing a buyer. And a buyer has to do the same with the seller, just to make sure that you're on the same page. And so nobody's giving away money for free, right? So those earnout agreements need to be so well drafted if you're getting an earnout, because they're generally about milestones. These days, you don't see all cash deals. It's a lot of rollover equity, state of the market, or earnouts. So a lot more caution has to come into play into those definitions of what everything means for that continued success. Because I want to do my part to have, the stat last time I checked was like 70% of sellers have some sort of regret post sale. And so my goal is to do everything I can to minimize it under what's under my control. And so the last factor, the one that makes up the entire hand, is acting as your outside in-house counsel. Most of my clients, they don't need full-time in-house counsel, but they need somebody that they can call. And most of my clients, if not all, have my cell phone number. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but they do. And actually, I don't mind it at all, because they call me, key strategic decision. Hey, XYZ is going on. Can you help me out? Or, hey, this just happened. Can you jump on a call? And if I can, I can. If I can, most of the time, especially if it's urgent, make time for them that day to make it happen. But so they reach out just with general questions, your typical vendor agreements, hey, this NDA came through. Can you take a quick look at it? And then handle all of the other 4 factors that we talked about as they arise, if I wasn't there in the very beginning to help mitigate, the risks and the problems that tend to arise in operating a business.
Wow.
So
From A to Z with Emmanuelle Litvinov. I have nothing else after that. That was a mic drop. Thank you for sharing. That was really, really comprehensive. And I think that provides the audience with more of a context of the services that you offer, which is phenomenal. So if you ever are in need from A to Z with those services, please reach out. You mentioned mitigating circumstances. And as you know, I'm a divorce attorney. I also do estate planning, preparing and not going through guardianship, not going through probate. How can we avoid that for families who have young children, 18 and older? When they're our children, they're always our children, they're always our babies. But when they're 18, they're adults. And if, God forbid, something happens, having something in place. I had a previous guest about a month or 2 ago discussing her estate plan and how her husband passed away suddenly of ALS. Things happen. And so we definitely want to be able to mitigate. So my question to you, Emmanuelle, is if you can share a story of someone maybe not mitigating those circumstances and not coming to you, and then also a happy story where they did and how that really, really was instrumental in the long run.
Sure. So I had a client once come to me with an already signed term sheet to sell their business. And once you sign a term sheet, it looks very bad to renegotiate terms to a deal. And so, and that's not a good, and this was for sale of the business. So once, again, I talked about the relationships and how important that is. So once you sign that term sheet, if you go back and you renege on some of the terms or you want to renegotiate on, unless there's something in the disclosures that happen, right, that you find out that's actually worth negotiating about, if it's just like, oh, I didn't have an attorney at that stage, it's not good for your future relationship. It's just doomed from the start. And so my hands were tied on some of it, especially because of how the language was drafted. They were very tied into what they could do and what they couldn't do. And we ended up turning it into kind of the best case scenario and what they could do. And the deal actually thankfully fell through. And the seller was then happy about it because we found a better buyer and they closed. They're extremely happy. It worked out wonderfully. But there were so many red flags of just, me in my office shaking my head of just, what do you do? How can you salvage this? Because the attorney's never the one that wants to ruin the deal, right? Mm-hmm. And so and people think they do, but it's more, protecting your client. It's our duty to protect our client. And so that one was a very tough one, especially because This client was very sweet, very just a good person. All my clients pretty much are, which thankfully I get the opportunity to work with those types of people. But that one was close to home, and so this one is now also I do the general counsel for that entity now as well. So that thankfully turned out good. And then a good story is kind of one of these clients that I actually haven't had for too long, but came to me. They had not a great situation with their last counsel, so they stopped kind of using them as often. Things just fizzled out, right? Got introduced to me, and they're looking to do a variety of different things. They're raising capital, they're looking to sell, but nobody's ever sat down with them and had the conversations, the goals, what's going on, what would you like to do? And they've very quickly become one of my closest clients that all of them have a soft spot for me. Again, I think it's the entrepreneur background that I have, and that I understand the sweat that goes into building your brand, building your company. But so we're structuring it in such a way and working on all those pieces that I talked about that's really setting them up for success and that's increasing their value. And I love doing it. Like, that excites me.
You can really tell. And having that, again, personal story, just being compassionate, right? And being able to relate to people is amazing, and also professional and knowledgeable about what you do. So I do have another question for you. Do you have any upcoming projects or anything that you would like to share with the audience?
So upcoming projects, currently right now, I have a lot of clients going through either buy or sell side deals right now. I do have a community event that I'm working on with a fellow Provisors member for a women organization, but we haven't disclosed any information on that one yet. But we're setting up something, so I'm excited about that. But right now, just kind of enjoying what I'm doing, and the clients are keeping me very busy, which is great, and enjoying time in this beautiful weather before it gets humid.
Yeah, it's been great this year so far.
Yes.
Knock on wood.
Yes.
Okay. Well, lastly, if you could just let the audience know if they have any questions, where could they reach you? And sure. All of your information, your contact information would be great.
Sure. So you can find me. My name is Emmanuelle Litvinov. I'm a partner at Florida Entrepreneur Law, if you want to Google that. Or I'm also on LinkedIn. My email is elitvinov@floridaentrepreneurlaw.com. You can find me on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
this was such a pleasure.
Yes, yes. Reach out if you have any questions out there, you business entrepreneurs. Emmanuelle Litvinov. And up next, we will have a financial wealth advisor, Maria Castillo-Dominguez. She will be talking to us about those breadwinners out there. You want to make sure you're protecting your assets. So from a financial wealth advisor perspective, she will have a lot of great tips for that. So that you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. And again, I'm Kristen Goss, founder and owner of KWG, Family Legal and Mediation Services. This is Civility Wins, the Family Law Edition. Thank you for joining, and please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until next time, take care.